already been a fairly insane super wild card weekend with some of the upsets out there. We got to talk about today's games, in particular, the Monday Night Football wild card game, of course, between the Eagles and the Bucs. Oh, good. My laptop is also going. But we are going to talk about the Monday Night Football slate. I'm not planning to talk about the Bills game here just because of the fact that I don't think the tournaments for that one are that great. But let's get into it. Let's start it off here, of course. Oh, no, I also changed the banner. God, I'm just clicking everything. Let's go here. It's Martin Luther King Day, guys. Hopefully you guys are off today. Of course, I am not off because I got to do some work for both. Probably had to do a call right before this one and also have to just get lineups going. Got a lot to hit on today in terms of that opportunity, but we are talking Philadelphia and Bucs here, at least up top. Philadelphia, 23.3 implied points. Tampa Bay, 20.3 implied points in the spot. No A.J. Brown for sure for this one. Devontae Smith, healthy and able to go. We're going to look at the projections, and this is going to be a weird one to start off because, first of all, Stochastic now has all the projections up for the Buffalo Steelers game, which, of course, got moved on Friday. It's going to be now a game going at 4:30 Eastern time today. So we are going to try to look at this a little bit differently here, still look at the projections, still hand build a lineup, still optimize lineups and do all that. We're not going to have the ownership projections for the slate visible here, so that's going to be the one change from what we're normally doing. But let's get into it and start with the projections, and then we will do the hand build and the optimizer and the sims, of course, coming up in a moment. Jalen Hurts, top projected player here. And this is the confusing part of the stochastic data today, of course, which you can get for yourself. Check the link in the description to save yourself 15% on all these stochastic data and tools that you can want for yourself. But it is a slate where they have the players' showdown prices in the normal DFS projections. They also have the defense. They also have the kickers as well in the projections, but they do not have the showdown ownership. Something to keep in mind if you are doing your prep work bright and early like I am here, I guess, relative to an 8:15 kickoff time tonight. But Jalen Hurts, top projected player overall, 21 implied or 21 projected points for him. Rashad White, number 2, 17.3 projected points for him. Devontae Smith, number 3, 16.3 for him. Baker Mayfield, 15.9. Baker questionable, but will be going today is the expectation. And Mike Evans, 15.1 fantasy points. He's a number 5 guy overall. Top values for the showdown. Devin Tompkins, a guy who barely gets any routes. He's a top projected play. Also some favorable touchdown prop markets out there, at least relative to a low probability touchdown. Grant Calcaterra, another guy who doesn't get a lot of work, but he's the number 2 value play on the slate. And Payne Durham, number 3. So these are your cheap $200 guys, along with Keeft. All these guys are not very valid. All these guys are kind of unsexy plays. You're going to get some in an optimizer. If you don't want to play them, I certainly don't mind it. But obviously playing these $200 guys, if they score one touchdown, they have a pretty good shot at making a winning lineup. So those 4 guys, Devin Tompkins, Grant Calcaterra, Payne Durham, and Keeft, those guys are all active. Those are your $200 guys for tonight. The other top value looks to be Dallas Goedert. Of course, Dallas Goedert, you would expect to see a little bit more opportunity with no A.J. Brown out there. People will probably chase Quez Watkins. People will probably chase Julio Jones. Maybe even Olamide Zaccheaus if he's going to be active today. A lot of people are going to go that way because of no A.J. Brown, but you should expect more targets for Devontae Smith and more targets for Dallas Goedert overall. Those guys are guys that are good target earners. Dallas Goedert in particular is the top tight end in football in a lot of advanced analytics last year. This year, not the case, but I think some of that you can pinpoint is him not getting the same volume that he's gotten as he did last year. So for Dallas Goedert, a more logical value in terms of the opportunity here. But of course, he's 6,400. These other guys are $200. We can't look at that ownership, but we can look at the optimizer here on Fantasy Cruncher. And of course, what the Fantasy Cruncher optimizer is going to tell us is not exactly what the field's going to play, but it is going to tell you where the math drives people towards. And this has been something that was really important. We talked about it on the slates this past weekend, where talked about a preponderance of Chiefs, how many Chiefs are coming in, trying to limit the amount of Chiefs you have in. Yesterday, it was the case with the Cowboys. A lot of Cowboys were coming up in an optimizer. And of course, not a lot of Cowboys made that winning lineup, just 2. And in fact, it was not the ones that are coming up in an optimizer either. So something to keep in mind with how the optimizer works, especially for a showdown. It's going to tell you everybody else is playing, and then you have to decide what you're going to do with that information. We are getting Jalen Hurts. It looks like in every lineup, 76% Jalen Hurts in the flex, 24% in captain. So Jalen Hurts is in fact in every lineup. Devontae Smith in 96% of lineups, 76% in the flex, 20% in captain is the math for him. Dallas Goedert is in 68% of lineups in the flex, 32% in captain. So our 2 100% plays do in fact seem to be Dallas Goedert and Jalen Hurts. Right away, what does that tell us for a showdown slate? If you are familiar with these videos, you probably already know. That means if you want to try to get away from the pack, you fade one of Jalen Hurts or Dallas Goedert, or you fade them both, and it's going to get you away from a large portion of the field. Do I personally advocate for that? No, I think Jalen Hurts is a strong play today. I think that Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert are both two guys that should benefit from not having A.J. Brown out there. Hurts going to have less pass game production for sure, but he's going to have more touchdown opportunity, more ability to run on plays. Obviously, with the banged up finger, the pass game production might have been down anyway. So with A.J. Brown out there, at least we know we have a cleaner target share for guys like Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. For Jalen Hurts, he's just going to have the ball in his hands more to run the ball, to do some of the tush-push kind of things. So for Jalen Hurts, I think he's a strong play, but it doesn't matter if he's a strong play or not. It's about building unique lineups, and if Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert are going to be in every lineup, then you could just remove those guys and try to get different, or at least one of them would be the case. Other things to note here, kickers. We are getting a good amount of kickers here. 56% of the lineups have a kicker in them. 32% Jake Elliott, 24% Chase McLaughlin. So neither coming up more than the other. But it does tell you that the projections think that today's a kicker slate. Something to keep in mind when you are building things as well. Defenses, 20% Eagles, no Bucs D. So once again, playing Bucs D, way to get low owned. People hate playing a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, especially a captain with the opposing defense against them. So that is one thing that we actually have seen win this year. I believe it was the Eagles-Miami game where it was Jalen Hurts captain that won. And the Miami defense was the one that ended up actually being the thing that you needed to have to get to first place. And that was when I remember I had the Eagles defense and was like, oh, of course, like the correlation rules, you're going to get Eagles defense. But in reality, like Miami defense was the one that ended up winning. So there's something to keep in mind here. We're getting a lot of Eagles playing the Bucs D. They can just get one touchdown. That's enough to make it. They can have a day like the Packers had yesterday. That was more than enough to make a DFS winning lineup, let alone a showdown winning lineup. But you can see here, 25 out of 25 lineups have at least 3 Eagles. So if you play a 4-2 Bucs dominant team, if you play a 5-1 Bucs dominant team, you are getting off the beaten path. And of course, that is a logical approach for any showdown slate today in particular. I do wonder if that's going to be quite as true. ETR has not put up their expected share in terms of what kind of team builds are going to be out there. But I would guess that we see a little bit less Eagles than this math is going to drive people towards. But it's just something to keep in mind here where the math is going to push people to saying, have 4 Eagles in your lineup, have 5 Eagles in your lineup. I do think people are going to be a little bit less into doing that just because people are very down on the Eagles. We've seen it in our playoff basketball drafts. I think we're going to see it in the DFS ownership as well. People really have had a pronounced lean towards certain teams over the course of this last month of just, talking about the playoffs, which teams are going the right way, which teams are going the wrong way. People hated Miami. That ended up being right. People hated Green Bay. That ended up being very wrong. So I think that's something here where the projections will force more Eagles, but I do think that the field will probably play a little bit less Eagles than they should. That doesn't change the fact, though, that like 4-2 Bucs builds, 5-1 Bucs builds still going to look pretty appealing. All right, so let's keep this all in mind here. Now let's do our hand build. Shouts to the chat. I know it's going to be a slow chat day because people are off. People, I'm sure, not dying to do. People are, I think the content providers now think that everybody wants to do the Bills slate or the Bills Steelers showdown slate. And I got to tell you, man, when I saw that got moved to Monday, I was like, I don't want to have more exposure to Bills Steelers. Like, I don't need more of this game in my life. I'll watch it today, but I really don't want to play more gambling around that one. Field, of course, still cold there. No heated field as well, so the turf is going to be extremely hard. Guys are going to be getting hit and really feeling that one today. So a classic playoff football kind of scenario, but not one that I think will be the most fun to play for DFS. But whatever. Let's do our hand build, though. Of course, we know now a good amount of information about all these various plays. Let's make the screen bigger because it was smaller for the playoff best ball drafts. We talked about Jalen Hurts. Kind of think a Bucs 4-2 here would be interesting to build. Bucs 5-1, also okay to build. Left the office early today. Early, so really early here if it's 11 o'clock and you're out. Got you in the big screen 1 in the morning. Justin here, living the good life. Would have rather seen the sites do a 2-game slate rather than the showdown. They are doing a 2-game slate as well, but the prize pool for that also kind of sucks. So I think they really just got stuck like we talked about on Friday where they put all the prize pool towards this Philadelphia-Tampa Bay game. So that's the one that I'm focused on. But I think if they had known in advance, obviously, it would probably have been another million maker for the 2-game slate. Instead, it's like $100K, I think, with still a $20 entry fee, which doesn't do a whole lot for me. All right. This lineup, our hand build we're going to do. Of course, we know that the field's going to end up with a little more Eagles than they want. So we are still going to be Eagles conscious here. Hard for me to imagine Jalen Hurts not being the captain, and I'm actually okay doing a 5-1 Bucs build with Jalen Hurts a captain. Still think, though, Devontae Smith going to be a little bit more of an appealing play for captain ownership for the field. This price tag for Jalen Hurts a captain, 17.4 is pretty ugly. That said, Jalen Hurts, I mean, even though the Eagles have had their downswing, this Giants game, of course, got pulled early. Still steadily putting up 20, 27, 23. The Dallas game was awful. The Niners game still put up 24. He still put up good games in the stretch, so I do think trusting Jalen Hurts for the most part. Does he have the ceiling to win it all? That I'm not so sure about. Evans captain is another valid play for sure. Evans, of course, facing the Eagles, who have not been good out wide for large portions of the year, giving up a 30% target rate out wide, negative 0.05 EPA, a little bit less egregious, but the slot targets have been really where they got beaten a lot. This is actually the Tampa Bay's defense. Tampa Bay's have beaten a lot out of the slot. So Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, I think two guys are in pretty good spots tonight. I don't want to play heavy Eagles for this build just because everybody's going to be playing heavy Eagles. So I am going to stick with Jalen Hurts here, but let's move him to the flex. Evans. Let's look at the matchup for Evans. So that Tua snap could work out. Yeah, man, the Dolphins were my biggest disappointment of the weekend. Really thought that they could do something. I really do think, too, that was like a crucial game for Tua, where even some of the Dolphins fans I follow on Twitter now want Tua shipped out of town. But I think that game really, like, they did not show anything. I thought at least they could have a shot at Tua putting up a fight, but that was bad. The Dolphins were so low owned. Like the Sklansky Bucks on the Dolphins on that Saturday slate were really high. You had under 10% owned Tua. You had a pretty low owned Tyreek. Like you had good plays there, but they just couldn't do anything. And that was an embarrassing effort. And I think they got to take a cold, hard look in the mirror this offseason. Tampa Bay's matchups, though, going against the Eagles. Like, again, like D Owens is saying, out wide is a pretty good matchup for Tampa Bay here. Facing the Eagles, it's given up a 0.2 EPA out wide. Same 0.2 EPA, though, to the slot. 0.12 EPA to tight end. And they defend running backs pretty well. The Philadelphia defense does. Negative 0.3 EPA there. But Evans is valid. Evans, we do know they wanted to attack downfield. Philadelphia does give up a 6% deep throw rate if throws to 20-plus air yards. Positive EPA there. All right, we're going to go Mike Evans, a captain. I like that. Oh, that's at the flex. Mike Evans, please go to your captain spot, like I asked. Mike Evans, go to captain. So we got Jalen Hurts, Mike Evans. I'm thinking this is a 5-1 Bucs build with Jalen Hurts as our one on the Eagles, but let's see where this takes us. Who else would I like here? Of course, looking at the advanced analytics from Sports Info Solutions is what I'm doing on this screen right here. Tampa Bay's defense, man, Tampa Bay's defense does not defend the pass well. I think that's one of those things that people have stopped attacking, but yeah, we do remember, of course, CJ Stroud game where he went off against Tampa Bay on the year. 0.01 EPA per drop back allowed by Tampa Bay's defense. 0.01 EPA per pass. Compared to a negative 0.1 EPA for run plays, which is a pretty big discrepancy overall. Making me question going Eagles heavy or going Bucs heavy here for sure. Oh, I really do think one of the pass catchers, like we could play an Eagles 4-2, and I think we're going to be unique enough, or a Bucs 4-2 with two Eagles. Let's put in Devontae Smith. I think it's hard for Devontae Smith to not make a winning lineup. Kind of feel like he might be the better captain playing a 4-2, because I think Evans' captain will be decently owned. Again, people anecdotally are not as into the Eagles as I probably am. I think they're a little bit undervalued. I'm switching it. Going Devontae at captain, Evans at flex. What else can we do here? Rachaad White getting some checkdowns. Rachaad White's workload has been not the greatest down the last few weeks. And I'm a little more biased towards this one because of the fact that Rachaad White was a key player in my DraftKings Millie Maker finalist. And watching him get swapped out for Chase Edmonds in that game over and over and over again was tilting. And the same thing happened last week as well, where Tampa Bay playing for a playoff spot. Still a lot of Chase Edmonds in that game. Kind of think Chase Edmonds could be a play that works in this build. I just think that we see Rachaad White get into a lot of lineups, and I kind of think that there's a shot that Edmonds could usurp him enough. Trey Palmer, the GOAT. So the actually funny thing with Trey Palmer posted a tweet this morning. And I was like, I'm angry. And I got this on my For You page because I guess they know that I was in the bag for Trey Palmer in the preseason, so I must still be now. And there are a lot of Bucs fans replying that, Trey, every time you tweet this, you don't play well. Like, what? And like dozens of replies to Bucs fans like shitting on Trey Palmer because I guess whenever he does I'm angry tweet, he doesn't play well. But Trey Palmer, valid, but I for the playoffs, we'll see. I don't think the Eagles can defend Mike Evans, and to a lesser extent, Chris Godwin. Could you use Eagles D with an Evans captain as a contrarian build? You could. I don't want to. You could. Again, like it's Showdown's just about building unique lineups. You can play whatever you want in those builds. You just have to account for the fact that you're expecting the Eagles D to get a lot of sacks and maybe get a touchdown in that game. So that's really the main thing. But I think for logically why you play a defense is that here the price tag works. I'm saving enough salary and I'm trying to get a floor in for a play where, like, if the Eagles D puts up 6 to 10 points, those points are enough for you to make a winning lineup. That's why I play the Eagles. But you can play the Eagles any build. Just Showdown's just about getting low-owned tickets. It's not about, I would worry less about the game theory of it. What do I think about Julio Jones? I think he's going to be treated like he's new A.J. Brown. I don't think that's correct. He's a fine play. Price tag on Julio on this slate is $3,800, which is reasonable. But I think you're getting the same play as Zacchaeus at $2K. I think you're getting the same play relatively. I'm trying to think who else would be. I mean, Quez had the big game last week, right? Quez really went off after they pulled all the starters. So I think you're getting the same play out of Quez. I just wouldn't treat it as like, oh, Julio is now the guy that's going to get all the work. I think if anything, Quez is more likely to get at least a good share of that work. But you should be treating Julio, Quez, and Olamide Zaccheaus, I think, like they're the same player. You could have higher ownership for one guy than the others. But I think that's sort of how I try to approach that. Okay. See what else we're going to put into this lineup. And again, Quez is valid, but I would rather say that like Devontae Smith has a bigger day. I think that people are going to really try to get to like, oh, Julio Jones is going to get so many more targets today, or Quez is going to get so many more targets today. And in reality, it's probably Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert just get more work. Like that's usually how that goes. Like these guys were starters. These guys were alpha target earners. So like the bench guy doesn't usually come in and take over like a Julio or take over an AJ Brown role and become AJ Brown. I mean, especially those guys, I just don't think they become AJ Brown. Yes, over-unders 19.5 yards. I just, if the markets are saying that, like, if he were in the 40s, then yeah, it's Julio. But again, I just think those three wide receivers, they all cut away at each other pretty meaningfully. Okay, we don't like the run matchup here. We don't want to put in more Eagles if we can. I think we put in Bucs D here. I think we say the Bucs get a defensive takeaway. Again, the Bucs D, not very good. I think they get underplayed. We did see Eagles D coming up a little bit projection-wise, but no Bucs D. Let's go with that one. I'm also going to go with the kicker here because I think the Eagles can get some stops. I think this is going to be a way to play it where I imagine a lot of people playing Bucs will play the Bucs, like actually putting up a lot of offensive points. I think we can play a build where the Bucs just kind of move the ball, put up some points. And this build could be an Eagles win. This build could be a Bucs win. I think there's some utility to this one. But I'm putting in Bucs and putting in Chase McLaughlin. And then I think we have Chase Edmonds is a really gross price point. 4,400 for Chase Edmonds. I can't imagine people are going to want to play. The projection for Chase Edmonds on Stochastic is 3.7. The projection on ETR is 3.8. They're expecting a lot of concentration for Rachaad White. And the last two games, I have not seen that be the case on the field. Like Rachaad White has been subbed out so much more than I would have thought, given that his whole value as a player was just getting tons and tons of touches. And now they've not been doing that. They've been giving Chase Edmonds a lot more work, especially on those third and long kind of plays. So I'm going to go with Chase Edmonds to cap this build off. So we have a 4-2 Bucs build. Mike Evans, Bucs D, Chase McLaughlin, Chase Edmonds, and we have Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith at capping. It's going to be my final team in the single entry huddle. Let's see how it does. But a Bucs 4-2 I think is lower owned, and that's basically it. Let's see the sim here. I thought I already built the lineups. Apparently not. Let's rebuild them. Of course, if you do want to make sure to get some of this stochastic data and tools in your life, check the link in the description. Save yourself 15% on any package. They also have new PGA sims, MMA sims coming out there. So if you want any of that stuff in your life, go save 15% with that link in the description. I think Rachaad White will surprise people today. The surprise, I think, for people would be if he plays like he's played the last 2 weeks, which is not very good. I think people really think that Rachaad White is a very strong play. So I don't think he's going to surprise people. I think people are going to go to him pretty heavily. I don't think he's not a sneaky play by any stretch. Again, we don't have the ownership in here, so we're just going to have to kind of let the sim do what it does based off the pool ownership, so we'll see how that goes. Of course, sim is going to build 10,000 lineups and have them compete against each other 40,000 times. That is how the sim process on Stochastic works. It's going to be similar to other sites as well. Saber Sim, another great product, which I'm sure still has some free trials going if you want to try that. RotoGrind is a sim product that I found less appealing, but a lot going on. Think this game will make you want to gouge your eyes out? I mean, I think Steelers-Bills more likely to be the one that gouges your eyes out, but I get it. All right, top 150 lineups here. So top ROI lineup right now, Devontae Smith, Bucs D, DeAndre Swift, Eagles D, Jalen Hurts, Mike Evans. So the top ROI lineup right now. 2 defenses in it. Of course, it does have a lot of salary spent. So I think that this one gets duped a lot would still be my guess. Anything that's over a 49.5 salary going to get duped in this kind of slate for sure. Exposures. Top exposed players. So it does want us to get 53% exposure for Jalen Hurts in the flex. How much at captain? And we're getting the most Devontae Smith at captain. 18% exposure for Devontae Smith at captain. Again, this doesn't account for the current ownership because it doesn't have it in there. So that's going to move the sim around a little bit. Top leverage players overall. Bucs D is the highest leverage player. Wants you to get a lot of Bucs D. So we did put that in. Again, Bucs D with Jalen Hurts going to be inherently decreasing that ownership product because people don't like playing star QB with an opposing defense. And Jalen Hurts has been pretty friendly in terms of turning the ball over. So I think Bucs D makes sense. Cade Otton, 2x the field on him as well. We're getting in the Sims. 2x the field for Captain Chris Godwin, which is not what I would have thought. Eagles D as well coming in. So getting a lot of Bucs stuff, a lot of heavy Bucs stuff to try to get away from some of the ownership, though we are still getting over the field on Eagles D as well. So Bucs D and Eagles D does seem like the Sims really enjoy both defenses pretty meaningfully. Let's look at some different captains here. If you have captain requests, drop in the chat. We'll look up different captains as well. Of course, I'm sure people are going to want to see Mike Evans because that was D. Owens having the first one. So let's see. Starts with Mike Evans. We got Evans, Bucs D, Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, Eagles, Jalen Hurts. That's probably going to be duped a lot. This one I would think gets duped less so. Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield, Bucs D, Chase McLaughlin, DeAndre Swift, Dallas Goedert. So you're fading Jalen Hurts. You are getting Dallas Goedert, who was in basically every lineup that we saw in the optimizer. But I like this one. It's a Bucs 4-2, so we're getting off the beaten path, leaving $1,900 in salary. These are the kind of lineups that you should be looking to put in, especially in the big tournaments. In a single entry, you maybe leave a little more salary or put a little more salary into your lineup. For the big tournaments, if you're playing that Millie Maker tonight, you should be leaving $1,000 at least, I would think, unless you're building like a 5-1 Bucs build, leaving $1,000 on the table, maybe $1,500. You could leave up to $3,000. It would not be the craziest thing in the world, but just leave some salary on the table would be the main thing if you are playing a big tournament. The teams have strong red zone defenses. Could explain Godwin to captain. I mean, I don't think the Sims account for red zone defense, but on the year, Philadelphia's defense very soft in the red zone, negative 0.2 EPA in the red zone. Running the ball, 0.1 EPA passing the ball against Philadelphia's defense. So they're objectively bad in the red zone. Bucs defense a little bit better, negative 0.14 EPA per rush, negative 0.3 EPA per pass in the red zone. So Bucs D tightens up a little bit in the red zone. Eagles D gets worse in the red zone would be the two things there. The Sims love the Bucs, and the Bucs 4-2 build should be higher owned than originally thought. Not necessarily. People I know better the Sims quite a bit. And also the Sims don't like the 4-2. It's just that this one came up for Mike Evans. Let's see. I could try to find the overall structures here, but I don't think they have a way to do that. Yeah, I don't think you can find the stack exposures overall here in terms of which ones are more 4-2s or not. But again, you are getting a lot of Eagles dominant. 4-2 Eagles, 3-3, 3-3, 4-2, 3-3. 1-2-4 here for Tampa Bay, 1-1-5. But again, a lot of Eagles dominant stuff coming up in the Sim too. The Sim basically is going to parrot back what you see in an optimizer for the most part. It's just going to tell you which parts are the best part of your optimizer lineups, but you're not getting a lot of Bucs heavy stuff here. Other captains to look at here. Excuse me. Let's look at a Chris Godwin captain. Obviously, that's going to be leverage against a Mike Evans captain, and do think that people will flock to go to Mike Evans a little bit more than Chris Godwin for sure. We got Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield. This one's 49.9, but whatever. It's top ROI lineup. Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield, Chase McLaughlin, Devontae Smith, Eagles, Jalen Hurts. It is a 3-3, though, at 49.9. I think that gets duped. This one, a Bucs 5-1 at 48.3. I think this gets duped a lot less. Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield, Bucs D, Cade Otton, DeAndre Swift, Rashad White. You have DeAndre Swift as the only Eagle, which basically would, I think that says that's like an Eagles disaster game. Jalen Hurts not throwing the ball, a lot of hands off to Swift, rather. Yeah, it's not the best. Let's see. Can we get like one with Devontae Smith as a bring back? Would be what I would try to get. Bucs 5-1 with Chris Godwin, captain, Baker Mayfield, Bucs D, Cade Otton, Dallas Goedert, Rashad White. I like this one a lot because you're fading Jalen Hurts. You're getting away from all that ownership. You're saying Dallas Goedert concentrates all the production as the bring back on a 5-1. He was a guy that was very well projected, came up in every optimizer lineup. And you're also getting off the beaten path by going Bucs 5-1 and leaving 2,500 on the table. So I like this build a lot. Again, if you are going to play Bucs heavy stuff. What else do we have here? Who else could put in a captain? I think a Baker Mayfield captain would be really low owned. And we do know that there is a world where Baker could run in a TD and also create multiple TDs for his pass catchers. Baker at captain here, 48.7 salary. I think that could work. Baker, Bucs D, Chase McLaughlin, Chris Godwin, DeAndre Swift, Rashad White. I guess the one thing that's interesting to note is going to be that if you see a Bucs captain, you are getting more Bucs dominant builds for some reason. Yeah, like all the sim lineups look like they become Bucs dominant if you put in a Bucs captain, which is not always the case. So maybe you do get heavier Bucs builds with a Bucs captain. So then you would want to go to an Eagles captain as part of that 5-1, which I think would then be Jalen Hurts. And then let's put in a Tampa Bay 5-man. Wow, so you're actually they're not building a lot of Jalen Hurts captains with the Tampa Bay 5-man. I love this one. So we got a 10% ROI on Jalen Hurts, a captain, Baker Mayfield, Chris Godwin, Devin Tompkins, Mike Evans, Trey Palmer. So we're saying that Baker creates enough pass game production for 4 receivers, which is a little bit thin. But Jalen Hurts, obviously being the captain here, is kind of the main thing. I think that works. I think that's the kind of build. I don't know why there's only 6 of them, but a Hurts captain with $5 would look pretty good. A Hurts captain with $4 will probably look a little bit better. Your Hurts captain with $4. So we get Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Bucs D, Jake Elliott, Rachaad White, Trey Palmer. Leaving 800 on the table here, but we're not playing Mike Evans. We're not playing Chris Godwin. I think that's a good lineup too. I like these Hurts one. I would plant a flag for Hurts captain with Bucs dominant build, so more Bucs and Eagles in a lineup. I think it'll be a little bit under-owned, and I think people are going to have a hard time getting the lineups they like with it, which makes it kind of appealing for a place of land to kind of grab. Gainwell at utility or Palmer at utility. We saw a few with Palmer, but let's look at that. Contains Gainwell. And you could also, like, if you really want to, if you're dying to play Gainwell, you could also just play a Swift lineup, like a really high ROI Swift lineup, and then just swap Swift to Gainwell, and then you're leaving more salary on the table, but you're getting basically the same play. So that's the kind of thing I would try to do. But Devontae Smith, Baker Mayfield, Bucs, Chris Godwin, Gainwell, Rachaad White. So we're getting 2 Eagles in this one. We are fading Jalen Hurts in this one, so that's probably why the ROI is going to be a little bit on the higher end. 48.9 salary as well. Bucs dominant build. So you're pulling a lot of levers here to get unique. That's kind of what you need to do on a slate like this one, especially with, again, the prize pool. Prize pool for the showdown, if you're playing that Millie Maker tonight, it's so heavily weighted toward the showdown. It's like, I think 40% of the prize pool goes to first place. So you really do want to be going for these narrow outcomes and things that give you enough levers to get away from the pack. And this kind of build where you're fading Jalen Hurts, you're getting more Bucs than Eagles, and then you're also playing a guy like Gainwell instead of Swift. It's a lot of levers to pull, but that's kind of as many levers you need to pull to get unique, I would think. It's probably like a 3-lever slate if we're going to coin something here that I've never said before in a stream. Trey Palmer, we'll look at him too as well for Dion's sake, who just wants some free lineup looks here on the Sims. 49.6 salary, Dallas Goedert, captain, Chase McLaughlin, Jalen Hurts, Mike Evans, Rachaad White, Trey Palmer. I would think that gets duped, even though it is Bucs heavy. Just not enough salary left on the table for this many players who are kind of known quantities. If Trey Palmer were like Devin Tompkins in this lineup, it probably is a little bit lower owned, but it's not the case. This one with Devontae Smith, Baker Mayfield, Bucs D, Chris Godwin, Jalen Hurts, Trey Palmer is getting closer because we're leaving more salary on the table, still going Bucs dominant. But I would still think that one's probably got 10-ish dupes would be my guess, because like it's just not far enough off the beaten path. Yeah, we need to see somebody really low owned Trey Palmer lineups. You can't spend all your salary and have Trey Palmer in, or you're going to get duped. This one is closer because we're fading Jalen Hurts, and it's a 4-2 Bucs build. Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield, Chase McLaughlin, DeAndre Swift, Devontae Smith, and Trey Palmer here. So we're getting 2 Eagles. They're not Jalen Hurts. You're getting an Evans captain with the QB. This is probably my favorite of the Trey Palmer ones. Not trying to get free. I wasn't accusing you or anything. I know that people are asking for things they want to see. I get it. Here's the lineup. Hurts, captain, Baker, Evans, McLaughlin, Palmer, and Edmonds. All right, let's see if that one's probably not in here because I think we didn't have any 5-1s. But let's see. And that's one thing that Pete used to do or was doing for his Sims. Like he would put in a lineup that he had actually hand built and wanted to see how it would go. Starts with Jalen. Tampa Bay 5. And then this one, yeah, I don't think we have any at all in a 5-1 with Edmonds. I don't think Edmonds is going to come up very much at all in a sim, is one thing I would say right away. I think the projection on Edmonds is so low. How much are we getting of him here? Yeah, we got no shares of Chase Edmonds in the top 150. Did we get any Gainwell? Did get some shares of Gainwell. Only 5% exposure, though, so they do want to get half the field of Gainwell. I mean, they are saying that Edmonds can't get there. I kind of disagree, personally. But the sim projection is so low that Edmonds is not coming up. And it honestly looks, just going through here, so you're even getting David Moore, you're getting Devin Tompkins. You're getting, like, literally every player in the game besides Chase Edmonds in the sim, which makes me think that Chase Edmonds is kind of an okay play because not people aren't going to be playing him, especially in the 150 sets. Yeah, there is like literally every other player on the slate is in here besides Chase Edmonds. So that's not great for Chase Edmonds, but also like that's a good sign in terms of playing him that you're just not going to get a lot of people on him. Let's look at one for Chase Edmonds. Dallas Goedert, Baker Mayfield, Cade Otton, Chase Edmonds, Mike Evans, Rachaad White. So playing both backs, which you could do, I think, because obviously Rachaad White's still getting enough work. I think the more EV move is to play Edmonds without White. So a lineup like this one, Mike Evans, Chase Edmonds, DeAndre Swift, Dallas Goedert, Jalen Hurts, Julio Jones. So we're playing 2 Bucs with 1 at captain. Kind of an ugly lineup, but I know for a fact I'm going to play some Chase Edmonds tonight because he's not coming up that easily. What's Jake Elliott's exposure? I feel like I haven't heard his name, say his name a lot. He's coming up a lot in the optimizer, so I think inherently he's going to be a little bit more of an obvious play. He's coming up 23% in the flex, 1% at captain. So they do want you to get less than the field at the flex and then also half the field at captain as well. Whereas Chase McLaughlin, the other kicker, not getting any of him at captain, and you are getting basically with the field with him. So the Sims do think that McLaughlin is a better player. What's up, Obi? Good to see you here. Our guy Obi-Wan. Glad to see him in the mix. All right, so let's do our 3 takeaways, unless there's any other captains. Who's like a good low-owned captain to look at? I guess I don't even know what the ownership is, so I can't even guess. Who would be a low-owned captain relative to these builds that we've seen? I think Devontae will be owned. Dallas Goedert will be owned. Jalen Hurts will obviously be owned. Swift, maybe a little bit less owned, I would think, coming off the illness. No good games in a while for DeAndre Swift. It's fine when it starts with him. Swift, Dallas Goedert, Devon. This is going to be duped at 50K. Never mind that. This one at 48.6, DeAndre Swift, Chris Godwin, Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, Eagles, Jalen Hurts. So a 5-1 build with the Eagles. But that is one that I think you can play Swift at captain and feel okay about it. 48-4, 3-3 with Swift. This would appeal to me a little bit more. Swift, McLaughlin, Devontae Smith, Eagles D, Mike Evans, Rachaad White. No Jalen Hurts in this one, but you're also only playing 1 Eagles pass catcher, so you're basically saying that he just can't throw the ball as well, which would not be a shocker, of course, with a banged up finger. But Swift at captain, I think, gets a little bit under-owned here. And people don't think the Eagles are good, so Swift getting there at captain would probably mean the Eagles dominating, kind of like Aaron Jones did yesterday in that game against the Cowboys. So I would say that Swift, kind of an appealing captain option. It's not going to have enough ownership. Hard to believe Evans gets there without Baker. He's more TD heaven than Godwin, it looks like. I think he can still get there without Baker. I wouldn't force that as a requirement would be the thing I would say. Baker doesn't run enough to add enough production there. And Evans does get some PPR points, and Baker could just get outscored by a bunch of Eagles. So I think that's not something I definitely wouldn't make that a rule, but you're probably more right than not that Baker gets in, but it just doesn't matter for a showdown. All right, let's do 3 takeaways here for this, of course, this Philadelphia Tampa Bay slate. And if you're looking for Bills and Steelers stuff, I'm sorry, but I just don't have it in me to look at that today. 3 takeaways that to get unique. Number 1 would be playing more Bucs. Again, we always talk about it here. When the optimizer says every lineup should have at least 3 Eagles in it, the way to get different is going to be to play the 5-1 or the 4-2 from the other side. We were not getting any 4-2 Bucs, not getting any 5-1 Bucs. It surprises me because people are really down on the Eagles. The projections, though, are going to force you to more Eagles. So we'll see what the field does with that. But I do think the field will end up playing more Eagles, and they realize even if they don't want to play them. So as a result, just playing 4 Bucs, 5 Bucs, going to be the better move. Number 2 takeaway to get unique would be, you could fade one of Jalen Hurts or Dallas Goedert. Again, we saw that in the optimizer. Those guys pop up in every projection. Still think Jalen Hurts, it's hard to fade him, but we have seen him make lineups in the same situation where he actually hasn't made the winning lineup because his price is so high. Other guys get there. Would think that you don't want Jalen Hurts more so in a Bucs dominant build as well. But I would say for Jalen Hurts or Dallas Goedert, feeding one of those guys will get you away from a pretty good chunk of ownership right away. And you can make a rule if you're running an optimizer, play max 1 of Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert. It's not always going to pan out, but that was my biggest showdown win last year, was getting separating out Joe Burrow and T. Higgins because they were popping up in every lineup. So that's something that's worked for me in the past, and it could work on this slate, even though it does feel inherently minus EV. Number 3 to get unique on the slate. I think it's playing more Bucs D, more Chase McLaughlin. I think that the Bucs overall kicker and defense a little bit undervalued. That is two of the pathways as well that the Bucs win this game, is that they just get a few more stops in. They're competitive enough to keep kicking field goals throughout the game, because that means they're probably getting stops on the Eagles side as well. So you can play those two together. You can play McLaughlin with Bucs D. There's going to be some loose correlation there. But also, like, I think just on their own, they're plays that have not a lot of ownership, but both have very obvious pathways where if this is a Bucs upset, they probably got there in part because of the kickers and the defense. So I would say that McLaughlin came up a little bit less than Jake Elliott, but the Bucs D didn't come up at all. So I think Bucs D in particular, like, is one way to get low owned, and play it with Jalen Hurts, play it with whatever, because people just don't want to do that. People have a mental block for playing, or just sometimes have rules to not play Jalen Hurts with the opposing defense. So something to keep in mind there. There we go. After Kelsey's comments, what will they do in the 1 yard line? Swift. Okay. I don't know. I think they're going to do what they normally do, would be my guess, but they could definitely, I mean, they're trying to use the tush push to set up other stuff. We saw them use it to set up a pass recently. So it could be something that's on their mind, is to do different things using the tush push, but I would still think if it's on the 1 yard line, like, they can get that 1 yard. They've gotten enough time. So would still err on the side of thinking the tush push is just going to be the tush push for the most part. There we go. That's it for everything here, guys. Of course, had to go through this one. There's a little bit of some inhibitors on us, of course, not having the ownership projections ready to go. Please do subscribe down below. Please hit that like button. Of course, splash play on that march to 4K subs, 5K subs, 10K subs, 1,000,000K subs. We can't do without you being in the mix here. So please subscribe down below. Hit that like button if you can. And of course, leave a comment if you're watching after the fact. Any questions you have too. I will be online today checking that out. And of course, thank you to all the fine folks who help us put on this show every day. Hit that join button as well. Get all of my data. Of course, all the people, all the things I talk about on the show, all the paying customers here on Splash Play already got that data on Friday or Saturday morning. We're able to look at this and internalize it and make better lineups with it. And of course, guys like Lateralis have won 50K just using the data from that. So I feel pretty good about the data sheet's value to you guys if you want to use it for yourself. And of course, hit that join button to get access to it every week, including throughout the entire playoffs. Follow me at Chris Spags, follow the show at Splash Play Pod, and come back tomorrow for, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do tomorrow. We're still going to keep going Monday to Friday for as long as I can here to figure it out. So come back for tomorrow at Tuesday, and we'll talk about something, maybe a wild card recap, maybe a look forward. I don't know, but we'll do something here tomorrow. I will see you guys then. Enjoy your days, no matter what slates you're playing, even if it's the disgusting Bills-Steelers one. Wish you guys the best of luck. If I don't take this stuff down, hope you do. Good luck. Bye.